I used to work night shifts, so I sleep during the daytime. A few years ago, I woke up to some pretty terrible news. I had a bunch of missed calls and unread text messages from my landlord, and they were telling me to call them as soon as possible. I called them up and they told me there was a leak in the apartment downstairs, when they figured was coming from my apartment. As a result, they'd shut off the water while I was asleep. That meant no shower, no coffee, I couldn't even flush my own toilet. The only consolation was that I'd found a plumber to find and fix the leak. And he'd reimburse me the money if I kept a receipt or invoice. Then was already around 3 in the afternoon. And when I learned the news about the water being shut off, which was obviously coming up to the end of most people's working days, I knew a few emergency plumbers who might be able to deal with the problem on short notice, but all of them were too busy to take the job. I ended up calling around to a few friends to see if I could stay at their place until the problem was dealt with. Luckily, one of my girlfriends was more than willing to take me in. She also offered me a Hail Mary sort of suggestion, though, as to where I could find someone who wasn't a pro but knew just enough about plumbing to be able to help Craigslist. I didn't think it would be very much help at all. I mean, I figured most people used it to sell stuff and organize hookups or whatever. But then again, I've never actually used the site all that much. To my surprise, there was an entire section of the services part of the site that was called the household. What do you know, third post down said something like 37-year-old handyman looking for some work, with the post saying he knew a little bit about everything and would take jobs on short notice and really low prices. It seemed a little bit too good to be true. And I suppose that's because it was I gave the guy a call on the number he'd included in his post and explained the situation to him. Honestly, I expected him to give me the same story to busy line that all the others had. But no, he seemed all too happy to drive out that evening to see if he could shut off this leaky pipe and go turn my water back on. I thought to myself, then all my prayers have just been answered. I mean, the guy even said himself, it sounded like a really simple job. He was amazed another plumber hadn't come out already, to just open up the floorboards, close off the pipe and turn the water back on. Now I knew absolutely nothing about all this. So when he said opening up the floorboards, or whatever, and how it was such a simple process, I just ate it all up. About an hour or so after I'd made the first phone call, the guy showed up to my apartment and told me he was outside. I realized I totally forgot to tell him which apartment it was. I let him know when I buzzed him in. The guy then showed up at my door looking totally legit. I showed him into the bathroom, which is where the landlord thought the leak was coming from. I then went back to my TV room and carried on preparing my very late breakfast. Remember my work night shifts at the time. A few minutes later, the guy who called himself Tony called me into the bathroom. Hey, does this look right to you? I walked toward the bathroom, stuck my hand around the door to take a peek. And that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I know, there's a bright light in front of me, and I groggily realized it was coming from the little pen flashlight of an EMT, checking if I was responsive or not. I started panicking, asking what was going on. They told me to keep still while they got a stretcher up to my apartment. They put me on in and wheeled me out into the hallway outside. There was the friend who agreed to let me stay at her place. She was in hysterics, asking the EMT if I was going to be okay. I remember relaxing and sinking into the stretcher. When I heard them say yes, I felt like I wanted to sleep for days. But when I told the EMTs I was feeling so tired, I could just take a nap while they were driving me to the hospital. They kept insisting I stay awake to do anything I could to stay up. In the end, they kept asking me all these dumb small talk style questions just to keep me talking. Then at the hospital, I'm pretty sure they gave me something to keep me from drifting off as well. Because apparently falling asleep with a head injury can actually be fatal. Not long after the cops showed up to deck a statement about the plumber guy from me. They'd gone through my place and found a bunch of valuables missing. Obvious stuff too. Like the TV being gone from the mount on the wall. All my jewelry gone as well, with my rooms completely ransacked. Only then did I put two and two together and realized what really happened. That guy was not a plumber at all. He hadn't even touched anything in the bathroom. He just used the whole handyman thing as a front to rob people. One of the cops told me I was the fourth person to get robbed by that same guy that month, only because he uses different phone numbers every time and never told anyone the truth about himself. They hadn't been able to track him down. As far as I know, they still haven't caught the guy. They pulled a few robberies, then quit when the public got a warning about hiring anonymous handyman on the internet. He's probably still out there robbing people to this day, doing his thing, switching it up and not getting caught by hope those other people he robbed and beat God over what happened to them eventually, but I didn't. Like I said, I developed a serious anxiety disorder after the attack. And it hit me in a way I just didn't expect. Bad things can happen to good people sometimes. I know that, and I took a lot of comfort in knowing the cops were at least closing the net around this guy. Then though, after I got out of the hospital, it must have been 2 or 3 days before I realized I couldn't bring myself to leave the house. I got nervous just getting food from the delivery guys that dropped it off at my apartment building. I figured it would just go away eventually. Only it never did. I always got this tight feeling in my chest and itchy feeling all over me. Whenever anyone I didn't know walked outside my apartment or outside in the hallway. Sometimes I still find myself running to the people with a gun I bought, staring through the little glass circle, waiting to see if the face of the guy who rubbed me is on the other side. I know it's never going to be there. But I still find myself doing it. I got a nasty scar on my jawline from where the guy hit me. To the EMTs said I must have had a steel skeleton or something, because it's a miracle my jaw wasn't broken. I guess I got a lot of scars people can't see, along with the wound I'm not sure will ever properly heal. So way back when the PS3 first came out, I really wanted one. I mean, I wanted one bad. The main reason was because I wanted to play Call of Duty 3. Still one of my favorite game series ever since. My ad itself was slow on pre-ordering one though. I was slow when it came to the actual release date, till I remember watching eBay like a hawk, scouring Craigslist every day. Day after day went by. And I didn't have any luck finding one at all. Then though, boom, I see this one post on Craigslist. That said a guy was selling his brand new PlayStation 3 and Call of Duty 3 included, both for like $400, at least $100 below asking price. The thing was, he needed to sell it ASAP. And he needed someone to drive over to him to pick it up. The person that could pay his asking price and pick up ASAP got the package. Somehow I got lucky, really lucky. Apparently a lot of folks were messaging him for it. And it sounded like they were going to rob him or something. I was older than most of those wannabe buyers. I can text him a picture of the cash and drive over to the Walmart parking lot that night to be able to pick it up. I felt like a kid at Christmas or something. Granted, most kids don't drive to Santa and pay him $400 to get their presents. But still, I was majorly excited. Only trouble was the guy was working late that night. And I'd have to drive over to the Walmart parking lot at like 2 in the morning just to pick it up. Now I know what you're thinking. Walmart parking lot to a yam, something bad was always going to happen. And yeah, I'd be lying if I said it hadn't passed my mind while I was thinking about this whole thing. I think I made myself clear at the beginning though. I really wanted that stupid World War II game, and the amount I wanted it outweighed whatever good sense I had. And that's so I found myself in the Walmart parking lot and south, hanging over way after dark. Like I said, there was always a chance something bad was going to happen. I just figured it would be from the other end of the law. I'm just sitting there when I heard someone tapping on the class of night driver's side window. I saw a gun and thought I was about to get carjacked or something. They got me out of the car at gunpoint. Then though I saw a badge on the dude's plainclothes belt. Honestly, I breathed a sigh of relief. At first, I knew my reason for being there sounded sketchy. Picking up a PlayStation 3 at 2 in the morning would have sounded really sus. If I was a cop. Then though they pulled the $400 in cash and my wallet and said they were confiscating it as suspected earnings for drugs. I started to get real angry. I told them to search my car for drugs or guns or whatever they were looking for. If they didn't find anything, they had no right to take my money. One of the cops smirked when I said that though, screaming in my face and threatening to beat me. His partner had to calm him down. Like he was legitimately worried he was about to punch me or something. The angry cop walked back to their unmarked car and the other cop wrote a ticket for the cash they took. While he did that, he apologized for his partner and promised if I brought some pay stubs to the precinct, I'd get all my money back. No problems. I was angry. I was probably gonna miss out on the police station. But I figured these guys were just doing their jobs. Getting it taken by the police was at least much better than getting straight abroad and carjacked by some random dudes that wouldn't have been so reluctant to beat me down. I drove over to the precinct first thing in the morning with some pay stubs, which I figured would prove the money was mine. I get their ticket in hand and some cop walks out with an evidence bag with my money in it only brought as she puts it down in front of me. I tell her there must be some kind of mistake. I told her the cops had pulled me out of my car and took exactly $400 off me. But in this bag, there was no more than 100. She then shows me the ticket in the little box that listed confiscated items. It's at 100 instead of 400. Right then it was my turn to freak out. I couldn't believe they would do me like that. I started demand and complaint forms numbers to call ball that a lady just thought I was sizing up the amount. But I swear to God, it was more money than that. She gave me the number to call the register a complaint, which I did. I know my no cops taking bribes around Baltimore is probably only raising eyebrows with the most naive of you. Missing out on the PS3 wasn't a scary thing though. The scary thing was coming home from work 3 days later and seeing a car I didn't recognize parked right across the street from my house. I didn't immediately assume anything bad. I just wondered who in the neighborhood had gotten themselves such a nice new set of wheels. That's when I saw him though. The same plainclothes cop that wanted to tee off on me that night, the same cop who'd stolen my money. He just looked me dead in the eyes and smiled before driving off down the block, was like a warning or something. Just to tell me he knew I'd made the complaint. If criminals or gangsters do stuff that shakes you up, sure. But it makes sense. Those Johns are supposed to rob you or shoot you or whatever. But when is the cops doing it? The same people who are supposed to protect you when you're supposed to turn to. That's really terrifying.